Welcome back. We have a very special guest on today's episode. Cecilia Rodriguez from Modern Day Mirror talks to us about her journey and how her intuition led her to her next vocation in life. We cover a lot of topics. We cover the nuances of intuition. We cover being on this path but not necessarily knowing all the steps. We talk about money. We talk about how to show up for this work if it feels really, really big, how to show up for this work in steps. She asks me a lot of questions about Prism, and we get into some of the details. She also shares some really cool insights from her recent trip to Egypt. Enjoy. Welcome to the Your Energy First podcast, where we talk about all things your intuition, developing your spiritual gifts, and if you feel the call to turn them into an incredibly creative business that the world needs. Welcome, Cecilia. It's so wonderful to have you back here.
So good to see you.
So you have an incredible podcast called Modern Day Mirror.
Yes.
And today we're going to chat about a couple of things. One, I would love to hear from your perspective how that came about.
Okay.
And then you had reached out to me because you were interested in Prism. And
Yes.
we haven't chatted about it yet. And you said, what if it's on the podcast so that people can get a better idea? And also, I have zero intention of, just so people know, like when you do this work in alignment, you never want someone in one of your programs where it's out of alignment in any way. Could be timing, it could be, I had an awesome gal reach out to me. She does photography, but it's on the intuitive aspect. And I was like, I can definitely help you one-on-one. I can't help you in the group program. Or, and for what, because she was actually wanting to integrate the intuition piece, like that part I can help with, but I can't help with the photography piece. Her guides will, though. That's the other thing.
Totally.
So I have no idea if Prism is going to be a good fit for you or not. We're going to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
So
I thought I'm like, the questions that I have for you are probably questions that other people would have too. So I thought it'd be a great experience for us to all learn together.
Wunderbar. Thank you so much. Okay. So how did Modern Day Mirror come about?
Okay, so I wanted to provide a little bit of context for the conversation. So, Emily, you and I first worked together, I think it was, gosh, like almost 3 years ago or so. We had a one-on-one session, and that was a result of me feeling like a stronger calling to walk in my purpose. But I hadn't quite figured out like what one of those purposes, because we have many, right? What one of those purposes would be. And so at the time of our session, I thought that it was writing. I'm somebody with a lot of lived experience rooted in the ideas that it wasn't safe to use my voice, that my voice wasn't wanted, or, it didn't qualify for a platform of any sorts, right?
All the
And
things.
so I'm like, yeah, like writing, I'm feeling called to share my writing. And sorry, I made some notes here so I wouldn't lose my place.
Oh, you're good.
So after that session, I kind of like thought about it some. I actually took a trip to Costa Rica. And as a result of that travel, I realized, oh, it's actually not my writing. I'm feeling called to create spaces for voices, for my voice and for others, right? And so that kind of like opened up my world a little bit. So I'm continuing on my energy work, right? I'm learning from you. I'm trying to figure out what this whole intuition thing is about, my inner light. To be honest, when I first started practicing my inner light, it's kind of like a hope and a wish, right? You're like, I think
Totally.
I'm doing this right. Like, and
Totally.
then as you continue practicing, like I started to get more clarity, I started to get more confirmation, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I was picking up the right things, right? So I started following as a result of that practice these intuitive nudges. And the first intuitive nudge was just to create a social media page. I was like scared to be on camera or like what people would think of me. And so I created, a TikTok and an Instagram under the handle Modern Day Mirror because I feel very strongly about what we stand to benefit from people seeing themselves reflected in other people's stories. So I
Beautiful.
start, these social media things. I also start publishing some writing on Medium. And then I take another trip to Thailand. And on that trip, I walk away with this giant lesson of having the courage to be disliked. I realized that in my social media sharings, I was trying so hard to like curate this image and watch my words so that I wouldn't offend anybody and just like totally overthinking things, probably losing a little bit of authenticity in the process.
As we
And
do.
so when I come back from Thailand, I have the courage. I'm like, okay, this is it. This is it. I finally get the courage to invest in myself. And that's where I made the decision to enter into the alignment container with you, which was a game changer. You know, you've talked a lot about how our intuition is different for everyone and it's its own unique language. And I think that's why a lot of people, honestly, like shy away from teaching it or talking about it because it feels like such a moving target. But in that one-on-one container, I was able to really hone in on my unique language and how my spirit team was speaking to me and what my tells were and things. And so from that point on, things quickly began to develop. That's how the podcast came about. And oh my gosh, it came so quickly. I think I got the inspiration on like a Tuesday. And like by that next Wednesday, I had all the equipment. I had gotten a Buzzsprout account. I was like ready to record my first session. I also entered into a storytelling fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me, training and mentorship to be able to facilitate and keep safe these spaces for people to use their voices. And I just started to relish in this like intuition goodness. Like I got to experience how good it feels to find flow, to, start walking more closely in my purpose. And I started to shed all of these old beliefs that were keeping me small and scared. And that has kind of been my journey for the last few months, right? I recorded the first season of the podcast, had an absolute blast doing that. And this is something that you don't know. But I had an Akashic Records reading the day before a trip to Egypt, which I recently returned home from. And in that reading, that there's actually the practitioner had this really great intake form, and she asks, kind of why, right? Like, what are you hoping to get out of this? Which was a question I hadn't even asked myself. And so, in reflecting on it, I realized I'm feeling this call to serve in a bigger way. And I'm having a really hard time discerning whether that might just be the byproduct of years and years of people saying kind things to me about my potential and or my internalized capitalism that has its own idea about what success or impact or meaning looks and feels like, right? And so in this session, it was really great. She opens up the records, and the first thing she says to me is, she starts giggling, and she says, "They're telling me this little one is afraid of her magic and power." And so the session is really insightful. She goes on to, show me some ways that I'm kind of standing in my own way. And she tells me, you're stuck in your mind. Like you keep looking to your mind for these answers. And what you really need to do is look down at your feet. And the moment she said that, I'm getting chills again thinking about it. The energy of Atlanta, Georgia came through so strongly for me.
I
I
just
was
gave me
like,
chills.
because for those listening, I'm a California girl. All my family is here. I'm a homeowner. I have a good job. I have a pension. Like my sister's about to start her family. I'm super close to my nieces and nephews. It makes absolutely no quote unquote sense for me to move to Atlanta. But in that moment, it was almost like, yes, free will exists, but that didn't feel like a choice, Em. It felt like a revelation. It was
Wow.
like, oh, my human self was waking up to what my soul had agreed to, right? Like where I was going to serve. And so in that moment, even I was like, oh no, because I really wanted to stay present for the rest of the session. But there was already this other half of me that was
Of
beginning
course.
to grieve,
Yep.
right? The
Yep.
natural loss that us humans are quick to hone in on when we have realizations like these. And so we make it through most of the session. And then I feel like I'm bursting at the seams, like I have to share this. And so I tell her, I'm like, Lizzie, the moment that you said that about looking down at my feet, the energy of Atlanta came through. And she says, okay, you said that. She said, the moment you said Atlanta, she's like, I see yellow. I see solar plexus. I see home, I see community, I see support, and for, this storytelling cause that I'm ready to take up that I have, unfortunately there's definitely been support, but I think what my soul is really like craving and moving toward right now is momentum.
Mm.
Because if we look around us, I mean, do we not like now is the time,
Right,
right?
right.
Now is the time for folks to stop playing small, walk in their purpose. And so all of that has transpired. Oh, and then I take a trip to Egypt. Because I'm honestly, when I had the realization that I'm moving to Atlanta, I didn't even have any more answers. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, I didn't even know why. And it wasn't until I returned home from Egypt that I landed on the offering that I want to birth over there in that city. And that is, to create consulting and events for these storytelling spaces for folks to use their voice. Because I think that our modern day systems are failing us. As we are waking up and our consciousness is growing, like people don't just want to be, entertained anymore. They want to consume and live in experiences that reflect their real world. And so, the reason the consulting piece is so important to me is because I think that's how I'm going to be able to influence the corporate world
Yeah.
and I think about my personal work history. There's actually a large portion of it that was dedicated to being support for senior leaders for many, many years. I mean, like decades. And I kind of resented that because I always felt like they weren't seeing me, that I was maybe a little bit of exploited and underutilized in things. And to be at this point, I had this big aha. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was all for a reason
Hmm.
because I very intimately understand how these leaders' minds and hearts work. The dilemma of feeling indebted to a system that is admittedly crumbling, but within which they've been able to achieve success, and also their desire to create space for more humanity for theirs and the humanity of their employees, right?
Hmm.
And so storytelling is just such a great, true storytelling is such a great way to meet people and systems where they're at. So, yeah, all of that to say, that's what has transpired since we last chatted.
Just a couple of things. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
You summarized that very beautifully. I also want to mirror how consciously you work with travel as a means for your personal evolution.
absolutely. The reason why it was important to me to mention those is because the more I'm learning, the more I realize that living is spiritual too. It's not just about meditations and setting intention. I mean, like we have to get out there and experience life, and that has shifted. Oh, I'm getting chills right now. I hope I want to start crying.
Do it.
That's how we wake up, right? How
Yeah.
we can shift energy and have these big realizations. So
It's funny because with helping intuitives bring their work into the world, everyone is stuck. Everyone is stuck from a place of, I don't want to create something toxic. My work feels sacred. I'm afraid to show up. I don't know how. There's no plan. Yet they feel this big, big energy within themselves. And then what do we do with that big energy? We start to assign it things. Oh, am I meant to be on stage? Am I meant to be famous? Am I meant to be a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, a multi-millionaire? But what's happening, and I've asked the guides about this because I see it in my practice all the time, and I've experienced it too. The bigness is because if we've been creating, I can't even say someone else's dream. We've barely been creating. Our energy's been dormant. We think we're creating when we're making love, painting, being in nature, and we are. But when you follow your personal vocation, like you said, one of your many purposes, it feels so big and it feels so powerful, and it just is. It just is.
yeah, when I first learned about your offering to help intuitive business owners, I when I first learned about that, I thought that it was going to be around a nonprofit. I thought I was supposed to create a storytelling nonprofit because, again, at that point in time, that was kind of only my frame of reference for how you bring a purpose to life, right?
Right.
And then kind of realizing, oh, I was a little bit misdirected in that. And then I thought, is what I want to create even spiritual or
Mm-hmm.
intuitive, right? And so for that reason, I kind of, like hung back and didn't really pursue learning more about Prism. But oh my gosh, absolutely. It's intuitive and spiritual. And I think, that's a dot that I'm hoping to connect for some listeners is that we have this idea about, what qualifies as such. And it really, as long as we're like moving with intention, right? Like it's absolutely, it's all spiritual and intuitive. Like you said, the photography
Totally.
business, right?
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true. I mean, I help private clients who are restaurant owners or who
Yeah.
are different types of authors. Authorship I wouldn't understand, and professional athletes. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
crazy. Um, so what's interesting is, money plays a really interesting role in all of this. And one of the things you've reflected back to me at the beginning of our conversation, which I hadn't noticed before, is when you said intuition's so unique for everyone, it's kind of a moving target, which is why not a ton of people address it. And what was really cool when you shared that is I saw, like, I could feel my own inner child feeling very insecure in that moment and realizing, oh my gosh, that's part of the reason I shy away from kind of telling it like it is online.
Wow.
And it's funny because before you and I met, I got the encouragement to share a post on TikTok. I'm like, I've been sharing in a very kind of formal way, I would say. And and it's been great. And I have a lot of respect for my journey. And I was like, but the last thing I want is for people to feel like spirituality isn't an integral part of their lives and that it's some concept of perfection. And so I've been really watching how I show up with that. So I was like, I think I've got to give some more of my opinions just to give people who care perspective, and those that won't. And my opinions based on my experience. And we need, to your point, people's stories. We need variety. We need to create a culture of individuals again. So thank you for that reflection. And also me realizing now as I look at Prism, the business side of things, what Prism is about is, here's what I love. Because Prism came to me years ago. And the steps to creating a business from a masculine, logical perspective are the same. And what we have done, I say we because Spirit, literally my VAs, is it's like, okay, step by step. How do you just check the boxes of, okay, I need a Stripe account. Okay, I need a landing page, right? But how do we remove that so that others, can focus on what's bubbling up from within?
Mm.
How do I take this big energy I feel and not feel like starstruck by it? And we sometimes we feel a responsibility that we're just not ready to step into.
Yeah.
And it's, how do we nurture the intuitive side of each of you to say, but what's coming forward for this chapter of your life right now? And how does it feel good for you to bring it forward? Now, to tie this all back to the reflective moment you gave me at the beginning of this conversation, money is the next, I'm going to call it, sensitive topic that I'm addressing in Prism. So if before it was intuition, now it's money.
Mm.
And with money, one of the things Spirit says, so I know people say money is energy. Money, excuse me, energy comes from source ultimately, right? And If everything is a derivative of the ultimate, of source energy, which is really just a culmination of all of our actions anyway, what happens is free will. So if everything that comes from source is ultimately love, and then whether you are a demon, murderer, an angel, a saint walking on this earth, and everything in between, it's what you choose to do with this loving energy with your free will. So then people will say to me, well, Emily, I want to make a lot of money, but I'm going to do really good things with it.
Mhm.
You and I know people who have done really messed up things in the name of love. And we know people who have done really terrible things with money, taken advantage of people, and then we know people who have done wonderful things with money. Money is the means in which our society evolves, period. It just is. One of the things the guides said, and this is in my book, but they go, if you were to just exchange money for potatoes, would you start hating on potatoes? And I was like, ooh,
The
touche.
guides always come in and clutch with these like,
They do. They do.
oh
And
my
and
goodness.
it's so funny because you're like, I'm not gonna hate. I love potatoes. I'm like, I'm not gonna hate
Yeah,
on potatoes.
yeah,
So, all that to be said, they say the most powerful thing someone can witness within themselves as they become a true aligned creator for their work
mm,
is that it's not about the money, it's about the abundance and the flow of
yeah,
life experiences. I almost hesitate to even use the word abundant, but they use that word because it comes from source. And they're saying money is always being created, money needs to move. Money is a flow energy. And so when we create, and one of the other things that I teach people in Prism, because people panic, their work feels sacred, and they're like, I feel like I should just give it away and I want to make it accessible. And I'm like, and how do you do that? So there's over 8 billion people on this planet. How many do you need to pay your premium one-to-one pricing? Great. That establishes you. That establishes you at 6 figures, which, welcome to America, you need 6 figures to have a gentle life.
yeah,
And when you have that freedom and flexibility, you learn so much from the one on one and you share it in group and multiple group settings in ways that are more accessible for people. You can do free complimentary volunteer work when you feel called. I will say this is the other thing about being in alignment with this work. Any pro bono work has to be in alignment. It's the universe is funny. It's like, oh, you think you're going to sacrifice yourself and your values so that you can be the martyr?
yeah,
Guess what? We're going to whop you upside the head just as much as if you were getting too greedy and hurting people.
yeah.
It's two sides of the same coin. It's all our ego.
Totally. Accessibility is also really important to me, right? Like accessibility to these storytelling spaces. And I've actually learned a lot from you, Emily, and your model because in my, initial business plan brainstorming, yes, there's the consulting piece, and I think that's going to be the money, the thing that pulls in the money, but there's also, like workshops, right, in the community and open mics. And so really creating accessibility at like all these levels within multiple, communities and things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it gets to be really, really fun. That's the other piece. Imagine if money solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
It will not make an unhappy person happy, but it will make a person even more creative.
Mm,
Because when you don't have the stress of thinking to yourself, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to afford this? Okay, well, what if, this or that or the other? You're literally generating thoughts in that direction. So when you're not, you're nurturing yourself. You're in flow. Flow. You know what I mean by flow. Flow can still
yes.
be a roller coaster.
Can I tell you?
Please.
So I get back from Egypt, I have this realization, right? And immediately I'm into like go mode.
Mm-hmm.
I am like browse. I'm like, what am I going to do with my house? Am I going to sell it? Am I going to rent it? I'm browsing property on Redfin. I'm looking at job postings. I'm like in my masculine energy, right?
Mm.
And I'm realizing that I'm getting more and more tense. You said the word fun just a second ago, and that really resonated with me. That was the clearest indicator that I was on the right path because this sounded so fun to me, this opportunity, right? The idea of like picking up, moving across the country and starting all over, it sounded so fun to me. And so I noticed that I was in this energy. And, as a result of our time in the alignment container together, I remembered my guides have very clearly taught me that it's when we're relaxed that we're able to receive. And so I had been stressing about all of these, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Like the timing of everything. I was like, nope. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sit here. I'm going to pet my little dog soft fur and I'm going to take a deep breath. And it's since took that step back that can I tell you within the last like 24 hours, things are already starting to fall into place.
I
I'm
love that.
already like these decisions are like naturally happening. I also realized this pattern in myself. I'm somebody who previously, when I made decisions, I've always been that way. It's like, oh, making this decision, like warp speed. And I was journaling about it the other morning, and I'm like, what's the rush? Because, we get these images from media and, others that tell us to make a dream come alive, you have to struggle, right?
Totally.
Like there has to be like so much sacrifice and it has to hurt. I'm somebody who has a lot of lived experience already, like living in that space. Like it took me
Mm-hmm.
a long time to be
Mm-hmm.
able to get the stability that I have now. And I said, it serves no one for me to unnecessarily put myself back in that place. And I realized that this sense of urgency was really being driven by external opinions. I thought, oh, if I, make this decision, because I did share with my family, I wanted them to all, one, share in the excitement. I didn't want to try to control their emotional response by waiting until I had more answers for them. Um, but I lost my train of thought. What was I just saying?
Oh, you were talking about being in the flow and when you were sharing it with your family.
Oh, yeah. And so I realized, oh, I'm worried that people are going to think that I'm not serious, that, this isn't a good decision, that I'm not really able to make it happen. And all of that doesn't matter to me. Like,
Right.
it doesn't matter to me if this takes 2 months or 2 years for this transition to happen. And the transition is just the beginning of it, right?
Right.
Before I even get to Atlanta. And I thought, why? And then you made a post the other day about how if you have a stable job currently, like that's your buffer.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have freedom, you have space, you have security
Mm-hmm.
to be able to start to build your offering. And it was just this huge aha moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually what prompted, that journaling session. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for that. And it feels really good to kind of break free from that pattern that I didn't even realize was subconsciously keeping me stuck in this like rigid fight or flight
Yeah.
energy.
It's so fascinating. The piece about following your vocation, like your own, for whatever the chapter of life you're in, it is such a big part of the spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's another wave of who am I becoming? What am I healing and undoing? I have some clients, like in my private client sessions, which I can teach this to them because I did it myself, but some of them move too fast. And their
Mm,
guides are like, hey, what are you intuiting right now? What if you took a break? And they're like, oh my God, that's what I was feeling, but I just want to get it done. So we're kind of like reassessing that. Or they're not really actually fully showing up for the work. They're
mm,
they're kind of like checking out a little bit and they're just going through the motions. And it's like, okay, so what are you fearing? Because when we do that, we're actually fearing something.
yeah.
The other thing that's crazy, Cecilia, is this is, I think, when I look at what's been one of the biggest mind F's for me to heal, has been the productivity thing.
Yeah.
Because there's a woman, she does incredible work. She does deep work, healing, resetting, soul retrieval work. I was like, woman, you do soul retrieval work? Like, that ain't no small potatoes. And she needs it's less than this, but it's 4 clients a month over the course of 4 months to make $54,000.
Wow.
And she wants to do absolutely incredible group work. live workshops to help women heal. And all of this was her working 15 hours a week or less. So, and her programs were not like 5 figures, okay?
Jeez.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So, when you think about, I was like, okay, in the 8 billion people in this world, are there her clients are women? Are there women who are at a stage in their life where they say, you know what? I've lived how I've lived. It's time for me to invest in myself and take this time and make this happen for myself? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, when we, so not working as many hours and then we're living is when more creativity, more flow, if we're meant to have reach, and I don't want to pinpoint, when I say reach, I'm talking about scale. You know, some people's work is meant to affect millions, and some it's meant to affect dozens and hundreds,
Yeah.
and both are right. Like,
Yes.
we cannot have every single person affecting 10 people, and we can't have every single person affecting 10 million. So all of it to say that you may feel the bigness and the fullness, and you can have a healthy business that is in the realm of multiple 6 figures. And then, as you feel called, you share your work in different ways. You know, you will write multiple books one day, and a ton of people are going to buy them. How wonderful. Someone is going to spend $11.99 because Amazon will discount books without telling the author, but the author gets paid the same. Yeah, I know. But the author gets paid the same. Shocking that they do that, to be honest. Maybe they won't by the time this is published, but who knows? But you think about, some people will only, like, that will be the only work of yours they experience, yet it's going to transform that moment of their life and everything in between. And it's not up to us to decide for someone else where they're at and what they need.
Mm-hmm.
So we share our sacred work in a way where it comes through for us, and we say, this is what's available. This is what's available. And then it's up to the other person to decide, this makes sense for me right now, or this makes sense for me later.
Yeah.
No stress.
I think about even like those we hear from really influential people and how they had their own influential people in their life, whether it was like a teacher or a mentor, or even just their
Mm-hmm.
own parent, right?
Yeah.
Somebody whose name nobody else will ever know, right? Or would have been aware of. But because of their impact, they then went on to, like influence another person who went on to do amazing work. And so those kinds of things totally just remind me that it's not about the number.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's so interesting because one of the things that I always think about and that I'm realizing in this work is, as intuitives, when we show up for this work, and if someone pays us and hires us to help them with something, we, as the person providing the work, again, this is something we're learning to undo. We expect that the work we're supporting them through is going to change every aspect of their life forever. And instead, we need to lean back and be like, okay, this person has hired me for this experience.
Mm,
I can help them through this experience. It's an honor to help them through this experience.
yeah.
And then from there, how much that impacts the rest of their life. I don't hire someone. I have a coach right now. I adore her so much. I don't expect her to change my life. I don't even expect her to fully change my business. She has a positive impact on my business, but it's up to me.
Mhm.
So we also want to kind of, as we show up for this work, kind of relieve ourselves. And I think this is very prominent amongst women. Now, I'm a white woman, so it's different too for women who come from other nationalities, but it's that constant showing up, constant proving. You know, when I worked in tech, and I worked with some lovely people in tech, the guides were never worried about what someone would think of them like the next day. Yet for me, I was like, gosh, I feel like every day I gotta show up looking right. I gotta show up and make sure I'm on top of the current knowledge, and I'm this and I'm that. And it's like, I just gotta let it all go. I gotta let that go. One other thing that the guides are reminding me of right now, as women at least, because I can only speak as I am one on behalf of us, we expect to build this fortress of a business from day one,
Mm,
as opposed to, okay, today I'm going to build a little she shed. Today I'm going to build a bathroom. Today I'm going to build this part. And tomorrow I'm going to build this part. People are going to benefit from the she shed, from the bathroom, from the movie room as you go along. And the universe has this beautiful way of aligning the right people to you, no matter which stage you're at.
mm. Speaking of stages, one of my earlier inquiries to you was wondering at what point in this process I might be a good fit for the Prism offering. Because, I don't even have a fully fledged business case. I don't even live in the city in which I want to bring this to life. And so, what can you share about that?
So, and thank you, because my next question was going to be, what questions do you have?
Mm,
As we pull in and ground the philosophies of this work. So, there's two schools of thought with Prism. On the one hand, so Prism was originally 6 months. The one-on-one program was originally 3 months. And then I realized we're doing so much internal work, we actually need to spread it out. So Prism the Collective, which is the group program, is now 12 months. And the
mm.
private is now 4 months. And the private was 3 sessions a month. And then I had to spread it out to two because people were like, Emily, I'm like processing and downloading and also at the same time writing this email. It's just like all these
Yeah.
things. So I will always, always tell someone number one is the timing is right when you're feeling that nudge and that curiosity, when you're feeling kind of that excitement. Now, for some people, it's also for when you feel resistance. And I'm going to be very specific when I use this experience because what I have found for me is there have been a number of times in my life where I know my energy and I know that when I feel a very specific, soft, rounded, it's got this light brownish energy to it, resistance on something, it's actually really good for me, but it's me stepping into like a next level, if you will, a next chapter.
Mm.
Okay. That is very different from when our gut says, no, not right now. Very different. Or not ever. um, all that being said, Prism takes you through a journey. There is energy work, intuitive work, as well as the tactical. What I teach is you building an ecosystem of sharing your work with the world. So you will create a variety of offers in your time throughout Prism. Some people will just have one offer. Some people are at a point in their life, they're like, I just want one offer right now. That's all I can do. And other people are going to take time. Like one of my clients, she has an established business, but she's ready to turn it into something more automated, like where more people are coming to her naturally. She's ready for more reach. And she needed about a month to 2 months to kind of like let things simmer, let them integrate. She went through the activities and she goes, I need to let this gestate for a while. So, one of my learnings, I don't call them regrets, I call them learnings, is I look back on the notes section on my app and I had all of these ideas and all of these things I wanted to share and say online. And I went back and I just kept thinking, I'll make time for this. I'll get to this. And I never did. And I go back and I read them and I'm like, there's so many people that would have benefited from this now or back then.
Not me having 50 notes in my notes app about TikTok videos I want to make and essays I want to write.
It's so true. It's so true. So, in answer to your question, the timing is what it's going to be for you. Longer term, I know that there's going to be people when their time in Prism is up. So, if you join the one on one program, you automatically get the group program because I want people to have community. And what you're going to find and what everyone's going to find is as you share your work, you're releasing like these beautiful blocks and floodgates and more creativity and more ideas and inspiration come. Can you guys hear the train going by? right now?
Okay.
Okay, good. There's a train going by. Choo choo. So join when it feels right. Do not feel, I never want anyone to feel like, okay, as soon as I join Prism, it's pedal to the metal. I have to
Mm,
go. I
mhm,
want people to look at their business as nurturing another part of themselves. So it's never been in my repertoire to create big, cumbersome businesses. So, what I teach people is how do you create streamlined businesses you love, that will change, that are going to be different throughout time. One of the other crazy things stuck in our heads is our parents' generation, or the people ahead of us, or maybe it's your current generation. Oh, well, how long were you in that career for? Did you stay with the same company for 30 years and retire and get a pen? Right? So your own work is going to evolve. And what I teach in Prism, you get a business degree, not literally, so please, you don't actually get a business degree, but you get a business acumen. And then you also understand how do you develop and nurture and give way to your intuition and your intuitive gifts, and then ground them in the masculine. The guides always say, they go, you need to make your energy consumable. Like, your
mm.
all of us, our creative work needs to be consumable. It needs to be made for human consumption, or no one's going to benefit from it, period.
Yeah. I actually went back and listened to our very first session 3 years ago, like the other night. And
Mm.
one of the things that, the guides came in and said, they told me, they're like, you're somebody who, likes to think big, right? Like you set big goals for yourself. They said, which is great. And what you want to do is, kind of take it in bite-sized pieces. They
Mm.
said, because to expect yourself to go from where you're at now to the end goal that you're visioning would be like ripping off a limb.
Oh, ooh.
Yeah, I know, right? Such a powerful visual they gave, but that's gonna commit to memory. But just about, yeah, I'm really resonating with the idea of like, checking in with ourselves. Like it's not about the business as far as like timing and the decision making, for Prism. It's really about checking in with ourselves and what we have capacity for and the work that we're prepared to do. So,
Yeah. And get excited because it's going to be a path. It's just another path of self-discovery. And
mm,
you're going to have months where you're just on fire and you're doing this and you're doing that, and you're doing this and you're doing that. And then you're going to have time of like gestational periods, or life happens, right? And I want to help people navigate the reality of owning a business because, again, modern culture teaches us, okay, you've got to work 40 hours a week no matter what. Oh, did you have a pet die? Are you sick? Are you this? Are you that? You're on your cycle. My schedule is now based on my cycle, which is like, I never thought I'd be saying those words in
goals.
1 million years.
Yeah.
I am a slow learner. I will tell you what, I am a slow learner, but I learn deep. So it took me a very long time to get there, okay? And one of the things to note is you also want to learn to grow and navigate your business throughout life. And again, that's why Prism is 12 months plus there's going to be extendable options for people at the end, because community is also what's needed. Because when you're creating and building a business, you need to be able to talk to other people about just the nuances of it. It's,
One
yeah.
1000%. When we were just in Egypt, and there's a little group chat for the group that went, and they people are just so, myself included, so appreciative of the ability to talk to other people who understand what it is to have this awakening, to follow these nudges that nobody else really can understand. I imagine for the business owners, like the variety of lived experiences that are in that community, right? Like people who might consider themselves well poised for this decision, and other people who are just learning from scratch. So I think that's absolute magic that you created a community out of the offering, Emily.
Thank you so much. Well,
Yeah.
from one community led person to another. So, how was Egypt? By
E-
the
e-
way.
Oh my goodness. I have this, speaking of notes in my phone, there's this like essay that I want to write or this video about how people marvel at travel, and they think it has something to do with the destination itself. And while yes, it's one thing to be immersed in beauty and connect to other cultures, yes, that's amazing. And going back to our earlier point about being in the relaxed state to be able to receive from source, that's what I think travel does, is it puts us in the position to be able to open up, soften, and receive. And so that's why those experiences are so magical. You know, a lot of that magic is inside of us. And so along that vein, that's exactly what Egypt did for me. So many wonderful conversations. We had a local tour guide who was so passionate about, his country and the history. I had this really great conversation with him. I said, we were at a pyramid and we'd kind of driven through the Cairo city, and I said, I can't help but notice that Egypt is known for being this like magical ancient civilization, advanced civilization. And yet, as we drive through the streets in Cairo, I said, I'm no doubt like the magic is still in the people, but the infrastructure appears to, be crumbling and not represent that magic. I said, would you attribute that to a certain leader or a leadership style? And he said this insightful thing about how the more disconnected that the people have become from that ancient wisdom, that their surroundings have reflected that. And I was like, mind blown. I mean, could
Mic
you
drop.
not apply that to every single corner of the world, Em? It was a beautiful experience.
This reminds me in one of the energy activations coming up, or maybe it's already happened by the time we post this, I don't know. The guides talk about radical accountability. And what that reminds me is that because this is how we're going to heal and create this new path forward is through this like radical accountability, recognizing why things have happened and then saying, okay, and now how do I move forward? And what he said is just, it's a total mic drop. It makes so much sense. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. We could go on a whole other podcast and just, I have questions about Egypt. So, what other questions, if any, do you have about Prism?
Um, I think that kind of satisfies my curiosity at this point. It was really, really helpful to my decision making. I'm gonna go get some quiet time, probably journal about it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
One of the things that so as I think the alignment container for you had closed. We called it that chapter had closed. And it was like a day or two later, and you and I had been emailing about something. And I got this really strong visual for your work, for your brand, whatever we want to call it, right? And are you familiar with Stephen Bartlett's work, The Diary of a CEO?
Yes.
I saw his framework and your work. I was like, this is what I see and envision for Cecilia. Like, it is, I see energy clear as day, clear as day. And I was like, it makes so much sense that you would have a brand around messaging, and it's a specific brand around storytelling and messaging.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and because you really do have a good knack for the podcast, and it's storytelling is so much about what you're perceiving, what you're integrating, and then how you reshare it. And you are just, that has always been one of your things since we first met. And whenever I received your emails in the beginning, remember, I was like, I feel like you're singing to me through these emails. And then I'd write back to you and I'd be like, blah, 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 blah. So it really is something that you have that's just very, very natural, no matter what. So whether it's Prism or anything else you work with, and same for the business side of things, the same goes for whether it's business or spiritual. We need multiple teachers and multiple mentors.
Mm.
Let me be really clear to everyone listening. no matter what, you will be successful at it, whatever your term of success is. Whether it feels aligned for us to work together or not, you will be successful. And look at every mentor as a chapter, as a guiding step, as a
Mm.
what am I meant to experience with this part, this phase? Because what we tend to do as humans is, this isn't you, by the way, I'm speaking from my own experience in the past, and I see it with other people too, is we look at like a business mentor or a spiritual guide the same way we would a teacher or a parent.
Mm.
And we're like, they're going to give me all the steps, and I'm just going to be the little duckling that follows and says, okay, you said I should do this, therefore it's going to be right. And therefore it's going to lead me to the promised land, the white picket fence and the dog and the kids and the two-story home. And
Yeah,
that isn't the case at all. So,
totally. I really, you say that, and I think about what we tend to do when we pedestal these people in our life is we like rob them of their humanity. And
oh,
what that does is we rob ourselves of the opportunity to see ourselves in these people because they're just like you and I, right? Like,
such wisdom.
yeah.
Such wisdom. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, sharing your work. Thank you for sharing the journey. It is a journey for
Thanks so
each and
much.
every one of us. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so lucky to have you on it, Jen.
Same. Same. I really value our friendship, relationship, whatever it is, who knows. Um, do where can people find you?
So I am still at my social media handles. There's the Modern Day Mirror handle on Instagram and on TikTok. And so, if folks listening are at all interested in how this journey develops and think they might be able to learn something, because I'll be honest, there was a part of me, you hear this idea that, oh, you have to move in silence, right? Like, don't let anybody know your moves. And, because then you're going to attract bad energy and, people are going to be jealous and all the things. But I think we need more people being really candid about their stories and how they arrive, at the place where they ultimately want to be. And so I plan on being pretty transparent on social media. So I invite folks to follow along if they feel called.
I love it. Thank you so much. And thank you to the listener for being a part of this conversation. Let us know in the comments what some of your takeaways were, or if you have more questions for Cecilia or myself.
Thanks, Emily.
Take care, everybody.